with any colleague, then you're more than welcome. I'm Smadar. I'm the CEO of JETS, and we do professional development, blended learning courses, and this year we've started our JSTEAM Hub. So please ask any. Yes, I hear you, Fanny.
Awesome.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Perfect.
thank you.
Okay, great. So welcome to Fanny in Miami and Tanya in Virginia Beach. Tanya, do you have audio now, Tanya? It says you're muted. And here's them. So this year we started the hub, and we're really excited about it. We have more than 30 schools who have joined from across the country. We don't have a mic, that's right. And we're excited to show it to you. Sam, I know you've seen some of it, maybe not all of it. This is what it looks like. Every month we add additional lessons, and some have different focus. For example, Food for Thought Taste of the Seder is grades 1 through 5, and the other ones can be 6 through 12, but each of them have elements in it that can be used for younger grades as well. And we have heard that from grade 1 teachers, even kindergarten teachers, fifth grade. It also has two PD lessons, one on what is meaningful integration and what is collaborative learning. And those are for teachers. If you have a PD day at school, you just want to sit around and watch the videos. It is interactive. It does ask you to pause and do activities on the site, so you can do that too. What I want to do is take a look at some of the lessons together, and then if you have any questions, please at any time you can chat or talk. Did you want to also share, does anyone do STEM in your schools, and what does it look like? I know Sam has a lot going on at SAR. Tanya, of course, you can chat in. Honey, you want to tell us what's going on in your school? You have to unmute yourself.
So I'm new at the school that I'm at currently, and I haven't really seen anything organized in terms of STEM. Every classroom is kind of doing their own thing. I'm mostly connected to the lower school. Kids do have specialties where they go out for science or where they go out for computers, and I think those teachers are kind of trying to connect their lesson to what's going on in the classroom. I don't know if it's really happening yet.
Can you just share what school you're at? I just said you're in Miami. I forgot the name.
Yes, so I'm at Catskill Day School in Boca, and I run my own program within the school. I run the special ed program, really for grades 1 through 8, but I'm just focused on Judaic studies. There's another special ed program going on at the same time that focuses on secular studies. So my goal is really to start implementing as many experiential things as possible into the lessons, which would obviously include, science, technology, engineering, math, the arts, the more the better.
Right, sure. Okay, great. Sam, you want to tell us what's going on in SAR? And Tanya, you can feel free to chat in what's going on at your school. Sam, are you still there?
I am, sorry. In terms of technology integration, or just what's going on right now?
With STEM.
So not much in terms of the science curriculum. There's a tremendous amount, but in terms of Jewish STEM, I'm trying to incorporate a little bit into my Gemara class, and right now trying to put together what an elective might look like, a JSTEM elective.
Oh, cool. Okay, so maybe this will help. So we recommend kind of starting with weaving a web. So once you're logged into the portal, you have all the sessions. You just click on them and they open. They are all linked to our site. They are all built on something called Rise Articulate, which is an authoring tool that we purchased. Tanya just wrote in, she's at Hebrew Academy of Tidewater, and she tries to integrate, but it's very time consuming. Yes, it is, and that's one of the reasons why we did this, to help teachers who are the busiest people I know get this into their classrooms without having to spend the hours of time. A team of 5 people put this whole thing together, and it costs a lot of time and a lot of money. So what is STEM programming? And you kind of walk down, it has a little video about what is STEM, what goes on in your school. That's just the introduction. Where does Jewish studies come in? I want to take just a couple minutes to focus over here. Here are models of curriculum integration, because what happens about Jewish studies? What happens when you don't integrate Jewish studies into your STEM program is that you're giving a message that STEM is important, science, technology, engineering, math is super important. Well, by saying that, you're indicating by default, even if you don't want to, that everything else is less important. STEM is what you need for your future, STEM is what you need for college, STEM is what you need for a job, but everything else, well, it's nice to know history and Judaism, but it's not completely essential. And obviously, as Jewish educators, that goes against the grain of everything we stand for. We want them to have that combination available. That yes, I need my Judaism and I need STEM, and actually STEM can help me understand my Judaism, and my Judaism can help me understand STEM. And that's really the goal of this course as well, is to elevate these two subjects and not just say, oh, this one's for your future and this one's for class. So what if we didn't? And that's what this talks about right here. And this just goes through some pictures of what that is. And again, this is meant to be a PD experience for your teachers. What happens when you integrate them, and who does it fall on? The student or the teacher to integrate these subjects. So you have these four: transdisciplinary, interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, and regular disciplinary. We're going to go through these four really quickly. I'm doing this fast because I want to get to the lesson. But obviously, if you're doing this in a staff room, you can make a game out of it, which is what I did when I did this on live in a workshop, or you can certainly talk about it as much as you want. So this is just 3 different disciplines, right? Every class, different subject. Math over here, science over here, Torah studies over there. Total, nothing to do with anything. Then you might have a theme. So you can see at Mitzrayim, everyone's learning about Egypt in math, in science, in Torah, but it's still, no one talks about that. They're still going in different subjects. And therefore, upon whom is it to integrate these concepts? And here this picture is telling us that it's upon the student to integrate. And then you get to the 2 other levels, where the teacher is already getting involved and saying, no, I'm going to help you study all these things together. That would be interdisciplinary. And an example of that, for example, in our Tu B'Shvat lessons, students study Chumash, chemistry, and more to find out why Tu B'Shvat falls in the winter. And then the final one is, here the teacher does it. The final one is transdisciplinary, and that's the ultimate, where everyone's learning everything. The teacher is assisting you in this, and like Tanya said, it's extremely time consuming. But that is the goal, to have all these boundaries dissolve, and the student is able to integrate all the concepts. So we're going to take a look at 2 lessons. One is called Gluten and Geula for high school, and one is called Food for Thought, the Taste of the Seder, and that's for lower school. And your participation is definitely welcome. This we recommend doing live, that you take these 4 items here and you have them in your classroom. Obviously, everyone loves to eat. Kids love to eat. We're Jews, we love to eat. So you have the 4 breads. When I did this live in a few workshops, I had matzah with me. I brought laffa with me. Maybe in Tidewater, it's hard to get these kosher foods, but in Miami and New York, certainly. This sourdough and just a regular bread. And then we ask the students then to drag and drop, and you can do this on your own. I'll put this link in the chat box if you do want to follow along and do it with me. Someone posted, whoops, there's a very long link there. You like that? Okay, so here you can drag, you take this and you drag it. Somebody want to take a guess? Who was the first civilization to eat matzah? You have to unmute yourselves. It's just the 2 of you. So, oh, Sam, you said it's very noisy there, but honey, you're not noisy, so you can unmute yourself and help me out so I don't have to talk so much. I have a cold. And or you could also chat in your responses. You have to unmute, honey, you're muted.
It's when I clicked on that link, it says that I need to get access for JSTEAM Hub members.
So the username and the password is just JSTEAM in lowercase. Just right.
I'm gonna guess hunters and gatherers.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Sam, why don't you finish with the rest of them? Tell me where to put the rest of them.
I'm gonna go sourdough for shepherds.
Okay.
Laffa for farmers, and bread for manufacturers.
Okay, excellent.
How's that?
That's right. Well, if you want me to tell you the answers, you got 2 out of 4. And we added a trick question in there. So these two are right, the farmers and the manufacturers. We're not going to go into all of it right now. You'll see where it is during the lesson, and that's part of it, is that the kids get to self-correct. So we do come back to it later on. So all these breads have flour and water, and only one had yeast, but two of them had risen. And even the laffa rises a tiny bit, but not really. Sourdough obviously rose, and the regular bread rose. But how is that possible without yeast? So you can take these materials, and this also we recommend doing on-site, experimental. This is good for all grades, and it goes through the experiment, and it tells you about the jar, whatever. And I made also this handout. Where is it? Right here. I'm going to give this to you also. I made a handout to go along with this lesson, and you can use these if you want. So here, jar has flour and water sealed, jar 1, and jar 2, we would ask the student to then draw or write or whatever is flour and water not sealed. Okay, and that's the gimmick there. Whoops, where did we go? I have too much going on here. Then, if it had yeast in it, that means, some people say, well, we have yeast, right? But actually we don't, because Louis Pasteur, who discovered yeast, that was only in the 19th century. So there has to be another way to get yeast, and that's sourdough. So we're going to watch these videos on how to make it. We're not going to watch the whole thing, but you'll hear just a little bit about it.
Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with flatbread. That's right, not only is this really flatbread, it's also really flatbread. And what I mean by that is, unlike modern examples, this is nothing more than flour and water. Alright, so this is about as primitive a bread dough as you can get, and basically the ancient ancestor of any similar type products you see today. But anyway, enough of the history lesson. Let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to go ahead and spoon some flour down.
I actually like that history lesson. I wanted him to, we found that, but it's great that he says that. And the rest of it, you could probably guess what it looks like. I'm doing this fast, but in class you could do it slower, and he talks about all things you could do. And he also mentions that it takes 15 minutes to make this bread, which is surprisingly close to our limitations on Pesach, which, as you know, of course, is 18 minutes. So again, if you're following along with this handout, here the student could then put in 18, or you could put in 18. Okay, so that's exciting. Now what about sourdough? And she talks about making your own sourdough starter.
Sourdough starter has a reputation for being tricky to use and keep around, but it's really very simple and only requires 2 ingredients. Hi, I'm Zoe Francois, and I promise you this sourdough starter will be so much easier than you think. This is from my book, The New Healthy Bread in 5 People. You can use just about any flour, but do make sure it's not bleached. Go with all-purpose, whole wheat.
Okay, she mixes it and goes all that, and then she tells you to leave it for a couple of days. Now,
collect all of the yeast it needs to become active. In other words, produce carbon dioxide. On the 3rd day, you should see some bubbles, albeit small ones.
And then she recommends doing this every day, mixing it and leave it loosely uncovered. And as a Jew, she mentions a very significant number for us. Guess how many days she says to leave it there for, which is also surprisingly accurate to our days of creation or days of Pesach, which is even more fascinating. So then the student could go in and fill in 7. What is super exciting there is that she has added nothing else but flour and water, which means that there's yeast in the air. And that's her proof. And she's not Jewish, and doesn't know anything about Pesach as far as I know. Okay, so that leads us to something called gluten. And this is also super exciting, and this is also a maintenance.
And some muffins. All of these baked goods rely on something called gluten. How does this work? First, let's start with a simple question. What is gluten? All wheat flours contain 2 important proteins, glutenin and gliadin. Now, in the presence of water, these 2 small proteins change shape and bond together. This creates an elastic network of proteins called gluten, which has the ability to trap air, much like a balloon. This gluten network fills with swollen starch granules and gas bubbles, allowing breads to rise and cakes to gain some gentle structure. Now, here in the test kitchen, we've long known that gluten is important in baking, but mainly we've done a lot of talking, not a lot of showing. So what is it on a tangible level? Can you see it? Can you feel gluten? I ran a simple experiment to find out just that. I made 2 basic doughs by mixing flour and water in a food processor until a smooth ball formed. And for one dough, I used cake flour, which contains the least amount of protein of all the different types of flour that you can find at the grocery store, between 6 and 8% usually. In addition, cake flour is often bleached, which further weakens the proteins. And for the other one, I used bread flour, which contains the most amount of protein, usually running about 12 to 14%, and is generally not bleached. So you can see here I have 2 balls of dough, each containing a different amount of gluten. But you can't actually see that, because surrounding that gluten is a whole lot of starch. For the next step, believe it or not, I washed the starch away. I placed each dough in a mesh strainer and massaged them under running water to wash away all of the starch. Once the water ran clear, a sign that the starch was gone, I was left with 2 piles of essentially pure gluten. As you can see, the differences in appearance and texture of the two are dramatic. The low-protein cake flour formed a very small amount of really weak gluten. You can pull it right apart. On the other hand, high-protein bread flour formed a large ball of highly resilient, rubbery gluten. It can be stretched very thin without tearing. To show just how elastic this bread flour gluten ball is, I'm going to try and do something a little bit crazy. I'm going to treat it like a balloon and inflate it with compressed air.
Pretty crazy. Okay, so based on what you've seen, tell me any Pesach thought or nutrition thought perhaps that's going through your mind that you would be now excited so far to share with students about gluten and geula. Any revelations or connections? And we haven't even gotten to, we have additional information, but tell me what's going on so far.
I love how they said that there's gluten or yeast in the air, and that must be why they have to make the matzah really quickly so that it doesn't rise, even though it's not touching any other ingredients or yeast.
100%. We didn't have yeast. It didn't exist, as far as we know, right?
Right.
Louis Pasteur just did it. So they had to be in the air. So that is probably what the Egyptians had. They had some kind of bread that had yeast in the air, and that's what we had, for sure.
I'm assuming the next lesson would be something about chemistry or something like that, the gases in the air or something like that?
Close. So the next part is, you can talk a little bit about what you said. So that's kind of exactly what you said right there, Khani. The students can fill that in a Google form, and that's discussed. So this talks about chemical process, and Tanya and Sam, if you have any takeaways so far, feel free to chat them in or share them. We need yeast, process, etc. But there's more. There's actually, if we go back now, see if you want to change anything. Sam, you were the one who guessed that the first time. If you want to change anything based on what we just learned, and I'll give you a clue that actually the hunters and gatherers did not eat any kind of bread, because they have 2 kinds of food. One, your food comes to you, agriculture, grain. One, you go to your food, hunters. If you're shooting or stabbing your food, you're not eating bread, you're eating shawarma only. So that's originally ancient history. Okay, so there's no bread here. Shepherds had a little bit of access to breads, but nothing major. We actually know Abraham made some kind of bread, lachem, right? But it's probably flatbread made on a rock or a hot kind of taboon looking thing. Farmers were the first people who had access to agriculture and made the sourdough because it had no natural yeast. Hi, Sarit. And then manufacturers, as Sam said, was that. So here we're checking back in for that. And now we're going to go see who were the first people to have leavened bread.
We don't have bread yet. That's a different invention. For the first 3,000 years of domesticated plants, people are eating porridge. Okay? It's a sort of a soupy mixture of grains and water. You might heat it up, you might not. So it takes to ancient Egypt, where we're sure there are bread recipes. Okay? And we know this because breads are in the tombs. We still have them, right? They're desiccated as they would be in the desert from long ago. And we see in the hieroglyphs the harvesting of wheat, the milling of wheat, threshing of wheat. All of these things take place here. And the invention of bread, again, women's work. We can figure out it had to have been women. Men were off building the pyramids. right? And mom is at home. It's not hard to figure out, right? She's got porridge sitting there, but she's got a 13-year-old complaining that she doesn't have the right frock to wear tonight with the rest of the girls. She's got an 11-year-old who complains he's got a football match he's got to get to, an 8-year-old who's just been whining all day, a 4-year-old with a toothache, and a 2-year-old who's got scabby knees, right? And she has had it, and the porridge, like she hasn't, it's been 2 days, okay? And this is how sourdoughs get started, right? There are yeast everywhere. This room is filled with yeast and bacteria. They will fall into any bowl of porridge I put out here. And in 2 days or 3 days in our climate, it will start to bubble. Okay? And if it's wheat, which is the only grain that has ever been domesticated, which has enough gluten in it so that the gluten strands will hang together as those bacteria and yeast exhale carbon dioxide, it will start to rise and smell a little bit fermented. Husband comes home from building the pyramids all day. Wife is like, I've had it. 5 kids are yours. This thing that's been rising for 2 days, I don't even care what it is. I'm sticking it in the oven. I'm leaving, putting it down on, right? She throws it down on the table. It's risen in the oven. That's called oven spring. And the kids like it. And they want it again tomorrow night. And they're bringing their friends over to come and eat it, right? And now the mom next door is like, my son had something over your house that you're calling bread that I want to make for my kid, okay? And so when we get to the archaeological digs, this is the Amarna excavation just behind the Great Pyramids, that the most common piece of artifacts that come out of there are bread ceramic cones that they baked bread in. Okay, this is roughly 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. There are 500,000 of these pieces of cones.
So here's archaeological proof that Egyptians are the first to have leavened bread. And a history college professor actually came to a session I did on this in Baltimore, Maryland, and he was verifying this as well. So it was exciting to hear that. Welcome, Sarit in New Jersey. So thoughts right now, any other Pesach thoughts going through your mind? Sarit, hi. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. I don't know if you were able to catch any of that video or we're kind of a little bit in the middle. But Tanya, feel free to chat in. Also tell us if you think this is, you know, appropriate for 5th graders, or Hani, any other thoughts you're having now about this?
I wasn't able. I just joined, so it's hard for me to.
Okay.
I hope to catch something here.
Sure, no problem. This was just a little history lesson.
I think if I could add,
Please.
it's particularly interesting for me. I was thinking about it just this year to talk about sourdough in relation to Pesach because of all the references to like Seor, and also the fact that like I talked to a bunch of people who are like sourdough aficionados, and like the whole point of sourdough is apparently like you want to get, some of these people have 50-year-old starters that they're still working off of, along with the question of like, what do you do with chametz on Pesach? Like you could sell your sourdough starter, but then that's like completely opposite to the spirit of like really what it says in the Psukim you should be doing with your sourdough.
Right.
But then what do you do with your sourdough that, you know, traditionally people kept year to year to year to year, you know, to the point that people have 10-year, 15-year, 50-year, 100-year sourdough some of these people are working with.
For sure. It's a challenge for people. Their sourdough. So what, go ahead.
Hi, as this was going on, I was thinking about my kids' lunches that they leave in their backpacks, and all of a sudden, like, they turn colors and they get hot. You know, I don't know what it's from exactly, but somehow the stuff cooks on its own with the chemicals and everything.
Right, from the air.
So it's interesting, like a slice of pizza or an old bagel. I'm just imagining like the heat that you feel when you touch the foil or the bag. So there's some kind of chemical something going on.
Well, sure. So, you know, they just said that air and flour and water can make it continue to rise. And here, all these historical archaeological evidence is that the Egyptians were the first to make sourdough bread, which is so significant for us. Because what, the whole thing with matzah, well, again, why bread? If we were not a culture that had bread, why are we now focusing on the whole idea of bread versus matzah? We all came in here thinking we eat matzah on Pesach because of we needed to leave quickly. So this lesson will hopefully show us another idea. We're getting to it shortly. So if the Egyptians were so obsessed with bread, why? They needed to be able to feed a lot of people, slaves, us, 10,000 people. They were farmers. They had access to water and agriculture, which is not something that we as shepherds had access to. And this is indicated in Psukim. Historically, it's indicated here in many Psukim in Bereshit and Shemot about this culture. There was some kind of culture clash between the Egyptians and the Jewish people. Bread was actually a culture point. And here we're saying, and all these Psukim have also recordings.
Vayimtza Yosef chen be'inav, vayisharet oto.
So this is when Yosef is a servant in Potiphar's house, and he's in charge of everything except the bread. Yosef is not allowed to touch the bread. Not allowed to touch it. And then when Yosef and his brothers go down to Mitzrayim, the Egyptians would not eat bread with the Israelites because that was considered an abomination to the Egyptians. That is very harsh language. There's no midrash here. It's all pshat. Why? What is this abomination that Israelites had about bread? And it's because of our shepherd culture. Ki to'evat Mitzrayim kol ro'ei tzam. The text tells us in Bereshit also. Because we were shepherds, that was considered a cultural demarcation. If you were to draw, and again, you could ask the students to do this. You can make this a blended lesson, make it as artistic or not as you want. If you were to draw the culture of Egypt, what kind of shape, perhaps, would it be? Their culture and their society. Would maybe be a triangle, right? And who would be on the top of the triangle? I'm assuming you said Paro, but you can unmute yourself, right?
Yes.
Paro, right? Who would be under Paro?
The people in the royal family, I guess.
The royal family, and under that would be?
His advisors, his servants.
And under that, and keep going down. Who's on the bottom?
So the slaves, the Jews, are at the bottom.
Slaves are at the bottom. And there's a reason, there are many reasons why we were slaves, but one of the reasons, even when we were not slaves, even when Yosef was an assistant to Potiphar, can't eat bread. We're shepherds. Shepherds would be on the way bottom of the triangle, but maybe before slaves, but they are not considered an elitist culture. You're considered a lower class culture. My husband is British. Even looking at British society not that long ago, all about that triangle, right? The royals and everybody else, landowners and everybody else. This is a very old tradition. So this whole concept of bread, it represents this triangle. This, I am more important than you because I am a landowner and you are a nomad, you are a shepherd, you are a wanderer, you are lower class than I am. And the bread that we eat or we don't eat on Pesach is now representing no. Judaism is not about class. It is not about your job making you a better person than I am. You are a better person because of your actions, not because of what you own or what you eat. And now the Pesach story can have a whole different meaning for us. So again, an artistic element here. You can do this online. You can draw here. If you click on this, it gives you all these drawing features. Or you could ask them to draw on old-fashioned pen and paper. I used to think, now I think. For the Seder, what kind of story can you tell now about Pesach, about bread, about gluten, about geula, and kind of have them make word clouds or triangles or shepherds versus landowners, all this information, and obviously this can take a lot longer than I'm doing it now, can go into that poster, and that can be a take-home for the Seder activity because we can't take home anything digital. I'm going to pause here for a second for feedback and thoughts. How much of this made sense, perhaps? How much of this was new information? We also, of course, have a game. I'm going to just stop for a second to hear your thoughts and feedback. Thoughts?
I would just want to go over the information and process it more. It's a whole new perspective that I haven't ever heard about before.
For sure. Yeah, it took me a long time when I was doing this to learn it and do it. But like I said, we had a team doing this, and it took time. You know, it took time to get this together. But once it did, there's so much information about it that it's a lot of fun, and it makes a lot of sense, and there's so much to take home for it. And the whole case society and all of that really is a part of all cultures. It's not unique to Judaism. It's not unique to the Egyptians or the British. You know, I was just in France last week. There's a whole lot of case system going on in their history. Certainly, any country that has a royal family, perhaps America's, you know, the odd one out in that situation. But all of these things review. So we're actually going to play a game, with all of you to review some of this. And I know it might be hard to do online, but it can be done. So we're gonna play Quizlet Live on some of the information that you've seen. I'm gonna put you in teams. And Tanya's writing. Sorry. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen. And if you could go to Quizlet.live on your phones or on your computers, and if you could put in that code, and I'm going to read what you wrote, Tanya. Never considered the bread my hammer. I did an experiment with 5th grade. Oh, great. Okay, thank you. That looks like a great experiment. Whoops, maybe I don't want to do that now. Thank you, Tanya, for sharing that. So if you could all go to Quizlet.live and write in this code 923568, you can use your phone or you can use your device. And this is a little bit of review on what we've done. Obviously, you would spend more time on this in class. Quizlet, for the link, you just write Quizlet.live, yes. Just press Quizlet.
I think I'm going to have to not do this because the internet is down at SAR. So I don't think I could get onto it from my phone.
Okay. That sounds like fun for you. I'm sure that doesn't get in the way of any of the lessons. It's good to know that happens at other schools. Does anyone else have access? Hani and Sarit, do you have access? So, yes, Sarit does. Tanya, do you have access to Quizlet Live?
I'm going there now, putting in the code.
Okay, if not, we'll skip it. Well, Sam, so what do we
I'm not sure how I'm going to play it because I came late, but I'll try.
Yeah, it'll be fun. Well, it simulates a real life lesson. A kid comes late and still has to play. So we'll just... Tanya, are you able to join? Oh, Sam, you did get on. Tanya, are you able to join?
I should be in. Am I in?
Yeah, Khani is. What about Tanya?
I think you need 4 people to play.
Yeah. But
Right.
Yeah, I can join, which I did. Tanya, are you able to come on in? Always fun to do this live. Okay, so we're going to start here. And here we go. Okay, so I'm with Sam and Sarit and Khani. So Khani, you'll get to help her out.
Hi, Honey.
Hi.
Okay. So, Khani and Sarit are hedgehogs. Look at your phones, and you have to look at your phone for the answer. Or for
Honey, you have the answer.
I have the first one, Sam. I have the second one. Oh no, I got it wrong.
Sourdough bread.
Okay. Shepherd.
No, it should be machmetzed. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Sam, I think you have the answer for hunters and gatherers.
The Egyptian. Or the vein more important space.
Okay, I got it.
You can have all the answers, honey.
Well, that'll turn to you in a second. Sourdough starter. Oh, okay, I got that one right. I wrote this. I should get it right, but it took me. But I haven't played it.
No, I'm getting them all wrong.
What is this? Lahmania. Oh,
Oh, good, you got that one right.
that's me. Wait, honey. First eaten by the Egyptian. What was it?
I think you have this one. Yeast
Yeah.
and gluten.
No, it's not.
I think it's the one with 2 Hebrew words.
bread.
Now. You have that one? Yeast and gluten. I think there we go.
Oh, good. Okay, sorry.
Sorry.
Leavened bread.
First eaten by the Egyptians, leavened bread.
That's mahmetzet. Do you know what?
Yeah.
Smadar and Sam won.
Sorry.
I'll be like my students. Can we play again?
Yeah.
Keep the same team.
That's right. So let them play again, obviously, and we've embedded it here as a match. So they could play it here online, or they could, or you can do it in Quizlet Live.
Mm-hmm.
Either one. And this is kind of just a summary. Egyptian supremacy, and our eating matzah is not only because we left quickly, but our eating matzah is because of this. We want to take away this counterculture of I am better than you because I own land, which is a very common knowledge theme in every culture's history, and we're saying no. Judaism is not about that. It's about who you are and what kind of person. It's actually the opposite of that, and that's a whole new light to spread on Pesach. And there's also now a lot of different, so again, this one I'm going to go really fast. There's Ramban, there's Balaturim, and then they have to talk about the Korban, and they can get it right or wrong. I'm not going to get into this now. I just want you to know that it's there, and they can answer this question. I'm obviously going through this very quickly, but that's the basic lesson, that bread is anti-elitism. And now I want to go look at the other one, and there's a little Maharal. This is all at the end. And then here at the end, you can have other reasons for matzah or using science. So these are, it's a Padlet. You can click on it and type on it. And in your own classrooms, you can take as long or as short as you want to do this. There was some artwork in the beginning with the triangle. There was the food experiment that we recommend. You can also bring a train on hummus and dips for the food part. You know, you can make it fun. All of this, you can make it take a week. You can make it take a day. It's really up to you. So I'm just going to get like a quick feedback, and then we're going to go look at the other lessons. So any final thoughts on this one? If you all just want to share
I think it's just interesting that, you know, the whole reason why we say that we eat matzah is because there wasn't enough time for the bread to rise. But if there would have been enough time for the bread to rise, we would have had bread.
Maybe not. If you look at the...
I mean, if they would just travel with that dough, right?
Mm-hmm.
You didn't flatten it. It wouldn't have become matzah. It would have become bread. Based on what we explained that sourdough is.
We're still commanded to eat matzah before we left, right? Because we have to eat Korban Pesach and matzah amar.
Right. So the matzah is a biblical commandment on the night of the Korban Pesach, the same as the Egel, which is also an anti-Egyptian statement. They worshipped cows, and we're eating them. So we're saying we don't respect or agree with your culture of worshiping animals. And we don't respect or agree with your culture of worshiping landowners or putting them in an elitist position. So the Korban Pesach and the matzah, which we are commanded to eat, could be because of this theme. So it may or may not. It might lessen the concept of ki v'chipazon yasanam b'mitzrayim. That's up to everyone to, you can go into each element as much or as little as you want. But that is an important point. Okay, Sam or Sarit or Tanya, any other final thoughts? Is this something you feel would go in your classrooms or not?
So I think the biggest challenge is looking at through the curriculum.
The what?
Through our curriculum, how to incorporate or convince everyone else, in the Gemara department that it matches up with the kinds of skills that we're testing, to actually use it in the classroom.
Okay, yeah, certainly, if you have certain only curricular goals that it has to match, so, that's something that you have to deal with over there. Okay, so we're going to take a look at this is the younger grades, food for thought, taste of the Seder. And this is about lots of foods that we associate with the holidays. Why does food play such an important role? And here's like a little video that talks about what you thought of when you were with someone. And
Joey and his grandfather were walking home from his softball game. Joey was thinking about the home run he almost got and how his coach said he was a good team player. All of a sudden, Saba interrupted his thoughts. Look at that, Joey. It's a popcorn truck. Even though it's far away, I can taste the popcorn in my mind. It reminds me of the best popcorn I ever had. Salty and buttery, delicious.
So it talks about how taste triggers being with an experience, and that Pesach is very similar in that sense. Watch the video about the way to learn our sense of taste. So this is Edpuzzle, where it stops along the way and asks you questions.
What's your favorite flavor of ice cream? I'm all about mint chocolate chip, and Squeaks is crazy for strawberry. Even though I have a favorite flavor, I love getting to try new ones. Isn't it great that we get to enjoy so many different tastes? From ice cream to beets, from peanut butter and sardine sandwiches to bananas and peaches, there are just so many different tastes to taste. But taste doesn't just help us figure out which flavor of ice cream is our favorite. It also helps us tell if food is good or dangerous to eat. If we get a mouthful of spoiled milk, it'll taste gross. The icky taste will tell us to spit it out instead of swallowing it, which could make us sick. So how do we taste tastes? Well, if you've ever licked an ice cream cone, you know that the tongue is an important part. Your tongue is actually a muscle, like the muscles in your arms and legs that help you move. But it's a special muscle that can detect temperatures, textures, as well as how oily or chewy something might be, and of course, flavors. And there are at least 5 main flavors that your tongue can taste: sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami, which is sort of a rich, savory flavor. Together,
so the Edpuzzle kind of gives you that way to submit your answer.
these 5 flavors in different amounts and combinations,
And then you go to the next one.
can have many taste buds. Even though they're super small, these little buds are where taste begins.
So I'm assuming she said that, and you go on.
Each taste bud is shaped like a teeny than others. So you can only understand the flavor of your food once your brain has gotten signals from lots and lots of different taste buds. Now,
Okay, so you get that idea. So now we're going to see how it works. So then this is like a little trivia game. So it's just, if you get it right, then, and it's your time, so you have to do that. It's basically the same memory game that you played when you were kids, but now you get to play it online. Let me just bring this up for a second. As you can see also on the bottom, there's a teacher's guide for every unit. This link with your students, don't give them this one, give them this one. And if you do have SCORM, then you know what that is, and you can just click on it and download it. And if you don't, then just ignore it. You don't need to deal with it at all. So we're going to identify taste with our eyes closed. So this is a great taste test for kids, and you can obviously definitely bring this into the classroom. Don't leave this as a digital experience. We're just setting it up for you. And here are some questions you can ask them. And here they can fill out the form, or you can do this all orally in class. You don't need to digitalize this here. We're just doing this for you.
Can I just say something about it? I like it, but we're also doing it in Sukkot when we're talking about the Arbat Haminim. One have taste, the smell. So I'm doing it with the class, and it's a nice idea also to do.
Perfect. That's a great thing to do for Arbat Haminim. So this one goes back to Pesach because of the Seder plate. But for
Right.
Darbat Hamenim, for sure.
Right.
So again, here's more. Do it again with your eyes closed. And then again answer the questions about which did each food taste like, and you have different elements. Did you remember something or a feeling? We're triggering the signs that she said in the beginning, and the video I said in the beginning, that taste can trigger a memory. And then obviously it's going to get to the point to Pesach. Hi, honey. Food and memories, and here you can press record, obviously.
Eating food can be risky. Wild berries or vegetables people gather could easily be poisonous, and many foods also spoil quickly, which can make us sick.
So it has the words and the recording for kids who are slower readers or dyslexic or special needs and they don't want to read. We can put in recordings, and if you want us to add more recordings, you can also drop us notes and we can stick those in. Anytime there's Ivrit, we do have recordings, but for English sometimes we do and sometimes we don't. So here's just like a little slideshow about what happens if you eat, and then you have positive emotional memories or negative emotional memories to food, and this is all scientifically connected. Encoding, storage, retrieval. Again, I'm doing this really fast, but you get the idea. And what does this have to do with Pesach? So here's the salty drops made me think of Pesach. The salty drops remind you of something. And here we go. So now they have to move each food to the Seder plate. There it goes. So that would be the main melach would go down there. And that kind of like the drag and drop in the beginning. And they can do this. You can also do this obviously live. You don't have to do it digitally. And then we're going to try all the Seder foods. Here's a scientific Seder plate. You're going to pass around a Seder plate with your eyes closed. And you taste it and go in it. And then remembering what the science lesson was about it, again, you fill in the chart. And you can do this digitally, obviously, or not. And then again, how do you think the rabbis who set up the Seder plate foods wanted us to feel when tasting each food item? Feel like a slave, a free person, or something else. And here you can go more into the art, more into the science, more into the taste. Obviously, we do recommend making this as hands-on as possible. We are on the screens. It's up to you to bring it to life in your answer. So you can explain here. And then what did you feel and think about? What were your overall feelings when tasting the Seder plate foods? So you double click on the Padlet, an element pops up, and which emoji, basically if you had an emoji Seder plate, if you could attach an emoji to any of the foods, which would it be and why? They can draw this, they can act it out, they can code it. You can code a Seder plate, you can take this into engineering level, etc. And then you go into the actual text about the Seder plate. So we do know it's supposed to be a matzot u'morim. And so what Shira said, and then you can play this little song.
מה נשתנה הלילה הזה מכל
So each one has its own.
שבכל הלילות
So they can do this part independently or with the group. You can also decide which ones you do together, what some you do at home, some you do in class, and click the arrows in the activity below to follow about. So you just click along, and here's additional. Which tastes are referred to in the 4 questions that we have in the Haggadah. Circle them in yellow. Well, so that's not yellow, but you can change the color, and they can circle it. And there's there's a bunch of questions here that you can go through. Why specifically those 4 foods, and then you take, all right, etc. So there's a bunch of questions here. I just want to be conscious of the time. Obviously, you're going to do this a lot slower, but I wanted to just give you an overview of something that's perhaps for older grades, something that's perhaps for younger grades, although I think there's a lot to do in the gluten and geula lesson for younger grades as well. So it's Mishnah about Mazgula Kosheni and what did his father come and teach him. Whoops, and that's not working, which is good. So a little survey about what they've learned. And then we celebrate Pesach with our taste buds. So here's another final video.
It seems like much of the way we celebrate Pesach is with our taste buds, decided Joey. I never knew that the rabbis in the Mishnah knew so much about taste and memory and how the brain worked. Then Shira chimed in, but I think maybe there were things that they hadn't discovered yet. Why do you think so? Asked Savta. Shira explained, you just taught us that taste can be a code that retrieves a memory of something that we experienced. But in the Seder, we aren't doing that. Joey said, yeah, we're tasting things that remind us of something that our ancestors experienced, but we didn't really experience it. How can that work? Savta said, actually, it is possible to encode and store other people's memories by talking about them when you're eating a certain food or by discussing or reading about familiar foods that were part of the experience. I actually read about a woman who writes about food. She talks about how, after reading Anne Frank's diary, Anne Frank's experience became part of her memories because of a certain food that was an important part of the story. She wrote that when she was 12 years old, she found herself crying about potatoes. She had just finished reading the book, which describes the horrors of Anne's everyday life during the Holocaust. In the diary, Anne describes creeping into the attic to grab some potatoes as a special treat for her sister's birthday. After reading about that, eating potatoes began to feel different for this writer. She writes that they started to taste like love for family, like isolation and deprivation, and like hope. Joey didn't let her finish because he understood and wanted to get to the rest of his question. So the rabbis used food to make Yetziat Mitzrayim part of our memories. When we eat these foods, we can actually feel like we are leaving Egypt. Now I get what we read in the Haggadah and in the Mishnah when they refer to the main foods that our ancestors ate in Egypt, some of which we eat in our Seder as well. B'chol dor vador chayav adam lir'ot et atzmo ki'ilu hu yatsa mimitzrayim.
So that's a good phrase for everyone to focus on, and everyone can then create their own, Seder plate memory or B'chol dor vador. How are they going to internalize it? And obviously you can make this artistic or engineering or math or etc. So those are just two of the lessons. So far in the portal, we have these 5. We have these 2 PD ones. The next one coming up is all in Ivrit. It's a STEM lesson in Ivrit with Judaism. It's called Ani Yachol La'uf, about flight and the Wright brothers and how they discovered flight, and the science of flying. And there's that great song by Harel Scott called Ani Yachol La'uf. If you haven't heard that yet, it's fabulous. And that's in Ivrit. So we do have different focuses that we upload, but and then we keep everyone updated. We also have a WhatsApp group now going on of people who have been doing the lessons and sharing their experiences. So that's just an overview of the 2 Pesach lessons because it is that time of year. Hope we're not cleaning yet. But if maybe we'll just do another round of feedback, and thank you for your participation. So your thoughts and any questions, and how does this work for you?
Thanks, Ladar.
Thank you, and I hope it's useful for you.
Yeah, will this be recorded? Can I share it with some teachers?
Yeah, it was recorded. I'm going to stop the recording now, and you can share it with teachers for sure. And the lesson and the handout and all of that is available